I've been listening to this for a few minutes now. I appreciate everybody being on tonight. We did one of these, was it yesterday or the day before? Yesterday, I guess. And look, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for being on the front lines. This convening really came about through conversations that um, we had with a wonderful team at the Greater Boston Food Bank. Hello to Catherine D'Amato and her great team, as well as the great folks at Project Bread, Erin Mackler and her team. And, I think for us in our office, we view, the situation is incredibly sad and heart-wrenching and unnecessary. And this is something that we can beat. This is something we can conquer if we come together. And I just can't accept the fact that tonight, 1 in 5, maybe moving towards 1 in 4 kids tonight in the Commonwealth are going to go to bed hungry. I cannot accept the fact that we have the fastest rate of food insecurity over the last year in the country. I tell people that and they're blown away. And, it's just, because of the pandemic, we see a lot more people. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, who maybe haven't found themselves in this situation before. We've got a lot of folks who, been trying to work and go to college and go to school, who are, hurting. Just so many people are hurting. And, and while we put out guidance, whether it was scare tactics, directed against DACA, protected individuals, or the public charge rule, just the general effort, and successful in many respects, to scare vulnerable communities from accessing services, from accessing relief. It's been incredibly upsetting to us in the office. It's something we fought against for 4 years. But now we have a chance to try to, connect people up. And so our office is here through the good folks, like Abby and Angela, Marconi, Tim, others on the team, to just try to help connect some of the dots here so that we can get as many people, so as many people can have their needs met. And, I was really shocked when Erin, told us that 40% of people who may be eligible just aren't signed up, right? For stuff that's out there right now. So thank you for your help. Thank you for your partnership. We're going to do a similar meeting, maybe next week, with municipalities, right? City managers, town leaders, school superintendents, again, as a way to make sure that people who are interfacing with our residents and families who are in need are connected up with the right resources. So again, thank you for everything that you do out there, and we're with you all the way.
So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I know the Attorney General is going to join us at some point, and I know she'll be really happy to speak with you when she does. But in the meantime, just want to welcome everybody. Really thank our partners from all 4 of the food banks, particularly Catherine D'Amato from the Greater Boston Food Bank, and also our partners at Project Bread, Erin Mackler and her team for being on the line. Also, all the folks at the AGO who've made this possible and are here with us today, from our Community Engagement Division, our Child and Youth Protection Unit, our communications team. We're here today to really figure out how we can best support you on the front line of preventing hunger in the Commonwealth. This is a priority that that the Attorney General has really taken on this year and wants to really focus on. So to really raise up the work that you all are doing and do everything that we can from where we sit to support it. So that's what we're all here for. This is sort of a follow-up on an advisory that we had back in September, which was focused on 2 things. One is preventing barriers to access for people seeking food pantry food, and the other what is sort of expanding resources and expanding sort of maximization of programs that food pantry clients are taking advantage of in order to ensure food security in the longer term. So we're going to focus the first part of the session on the barriers to access issue, and then the second part of the session on the expanding access issue. So with that, I think I will turn things over to our amazing partner, Catherine D'Amato from the Greater Boston Food Bank, to kick us off.
All right. Oh, there we go. Good evening, everybody. It's a bit of an echo. Anybody else get in? No? Okay, great. I'll deal with it here. So hi, I'm Catherine D'Amato with the Greater Boston Food Bank, and I want to recognize my colleagues from the Food Bank of Western Mass, Worcester, and the Merrimack Valley who are with us today. And I want to give a big shout out to Erin and her team at Project Bread. Just awesome working with you. And we fully believe that we need the emergency food system, and we need these federal nutrition programs that are so vital to help all of those in need. I think we would agree that as food bankers and pantry leaders and hunger advocates, that we're here to make sure that we provide a welcome place for anyone that seeks food. And that's part of our discussion tonight, to make sure there's no stigma or shame, and to do our best to normalize this incredible situation that families find themselves in. And as many of you know, the Attorney General's office and other state agencies, the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, USDA, and the Massachusetts Emergency Agriculture Department through MEFAP, had sent out advisories this summer just to remind us and to make sure that we're aware of the rules and the laws across the state. And that advisory prohibited the practice of asking clients for a photo ID or a social security number. And we shared that with the partners in the food bank system, and we just appreciate your very quick response and acting on any changes where appropriate. And again, the Attorney General's office gave us just an update and making sure that we could understand any implications and continued guidance. So we thank the AG's office and that team for just being a true partner and helping us navigate these waters of just enormous increase that's going across our state due to COVID. So on the call today, I have a couple of folks from GBFD, John Tatro and Rachel Weil. They're available to answer any questions that you might have about our emergency system, but also Jean McMurray and Merrimack Valley and Western Mass folks. They can speak very well to what's going on in their areas as well. This came up last night, and there were many great answers that were specific to certain parts of the state. So we're happy to be here. We're happy to listen. We're happy to learn and then hopefully act and share some best practices. And again, on behalf of the food bank, the Massachusetts Food Bank Coalition, want to thank all of you for joining you. And I think we are deeply grateful for what you all do every day to make sure that people get the food they need. So thanks so much. I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Really appreciate that. Now I'm going to pass things over to our own Community Engagement Director, Marconi Almeida Barros, who I know has spoken to a number of food pantry operators on the ground about barriers to access, as well as community leaders across the state, and has some information to share along those regards.
Thank you so much, Abby, and thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Marconi Almeida Barros. I'm the director of the AG's Community Engagement Division. As the Community Engagement Division, our job is to be with communities across the state. And with that, we are in conversations all the time, visiting food pantries. And this evening, there are two food pantries who have shared with their experience, and I would like to bring up to you guys on particular issues that they're facing or that their clients faced before, and some change that they have implemented in order to serve more people. So La Colaborativa, formerly the Chelsea Collaborative in Chelsea, and Luma in Everett through the Grace Food Pantry, they are serving over 3,000 individuals weekly. 80% of them are immigrants, and others include a wide range of low-income individuals, homeless, victims of abuse and domestic violence. They're all part of those 3,000 individuals that they serve weekly. They do not ask for ID and or proof of residence because they know that those in line either don't have the documents, have expired passports, and live in household with other families, not their own families, but with different families, so they don't even have utility bills in their name. Last year, in the beginning of the pandemic, they were trying to prioritize individuals to serve individuals who live in their city, where they are located, in that case, Chelsea and Everett. But notice that the need is actually greater than those who reside in their own communities. So they opened the pantry to serve everyone from the region. They are emphatically telling individuals that there is no need to present an ID to get food, and are asking those in line to tell others, because they believe in their own experience that the word of mouth, that is actually what really works with those communities. So since they started to do this, not asking for ID, but also telling folks to tell others that there is no need for identification in order to receive food, they start to receive more people coming to the pantry, including a high number of homeless individuals, not immigrants per se, but homeless individuals. So for immigrants specifically, and I'm quoting them, asking for ID means asking about their immigration status, which it varies. Even when they are naturalized US citizens, because of their cultural background, asking for their ID usually means asking them for proof of citizenship. So asking those who are in line, who are immigrants, for ID in order to give them much needed food was really turning them away of receiving that assistance. And that's why they were and are emphatically telling people to tell others that there is no need to present an ID. That same goes to victim of domestic violence. And according to them, actually, cases of domestic violence are actually increasing these days. Since the beginning of the pandemic, they've seen more and more and more because they talk to individuals throughout the line while they're waiting to receive food. And in those cases, they usually lose their documentation when they escape from violence. So pantries are actually one of the few resources that they have in order to receive assistance. And that's why they emphasize that the need for telling individuals who are waiting to receive the assistance to not ask for an ID or a proof of residence is extremely important. So that's in a nutshell what they've asked me to share with all of you this evening.
Thank you, Mark. Oops, I'm going to pause for a second. See if okay, I think the echo went away. Thank you so much, Marconi, for sharing those insights. Based on those and others, we sort of put together this guidance to outline some best practices around preventing barriers to access and also complying with legal obligations. I just want to thank the food banks for their input into it, as well as the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute, which did a lot of the legwork here, both in terms of liaising with stakeholders and the legal analysis and sort of tracking and giving us information about food pantry practices and sort of what was going on the line. So thank you to our friends at MLRI as well. And during the discussion session, I think we'd certainly like to hear more about what you all have seen about barriers to access and how you've overcome them. But I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes about some practical tips that we developed as part of the advisory. And we'll put the advisory in the chat as well, so you can follow along there if you'd like. So the first is that we, as Marconi and Catherine both said, advise that you don't ask for photo ID, social security cards, or social security numbers to access food pantry food. This practice is, of course, prohibited for those distributing TFAP and NEFAP food, as Catherine D'Amato mentioned. And it also just presents a number of other legal concerns regarding the privacy and civil rights of food pantry clients. So it's really best to avoid those kinds of practices altogether. Second, as to other documentation requirements, we of course know that there may be some reasons to collect some information about the residency or the identity of food pantry clients. And our recommendation there is just that you minimize any such requirements and you allow clients to self-report any required information rather than actually having required documents. Where there are required documents, our recommendation is to accept a broad range of as broad a range of documents as possible to meet those requirements. And we do have a list in the advisory of documents you might want to consider if there are those requirements in place. To the extent there are, we of course also recommend that there be exceptions to any such requirements and that those exceptions be well publicized, both at the food pantry itself and online and through social media channels. A few just other sort of tips to share as we've done this work and heard from folks about best practices. We know there are some pantries that have recently changed their policies around this, which is really great to no longer require photo ID and social security numbers or cards. It's important when you make those kinds of changes or other changes to your requirements that you make sure to make those changes on your websites and your social media feeds and in the information listed with Project Bread or other organizations, just to ensure that all the information that's out there is up to date for folks when they want to find out what you might require. We know also some food pantries run other programs where certain documents are required, and our recommendation there is just to keep the requirements separate so that if you're requiring documents to apply for certain types of benefits, that those not be required for somebody that's just come looking for food pantry food. We've also heard concerns that there are certain funders or board members or others that might be looking for these types of requirements. If you hear of funders or have funders who are asking for these types of requirements, and we'd really like to know about that. So you can let your food bank know, let us know. We are more than happy to take on sort of an education role in the foundation world to make sure that that the funders sort of know about some of the barriers that some of these types of requirements present for you and for your clients. Finally, I know I mentioned the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute, or MLRI, previously. I also just wanted to mention that they are there as a resource, particularly for any immigrant clients who have questions about their eligibility for public benefits like SNAP, or if they have questions about the so-called public charge rule. I know we're seeing some really good news from the federal government about the public charge rule that hopefully will unwind the harm that rule has had, but it's going to take some time. So I'm just hopeful that in the meantime, if clients have questions, they can rely on MLRI. And then the second is for clients who believe they have been wrongly denied or terminated from benefits. MLRI is also able to offer assistance along those lines to make sure that people aren't wrongfully terminated from their benefits. So now what I'd like to do is we just sort of presented a whole bunch of information. I'd like to open things up in the chat feature for people to ask questions or lodge any concerns or tell us about any innovative ways that you're addressing barriers to access that we've discussed or others at your food pantries. Please feel free to write in the chat function or raise your hand if you have something to say along those lines. Great, thank you. I'm available from Project Bread.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Attorney General Healey, your whole team, the 4 food banks, mass law reform, and everyone on here. You all, I just want to echo the comments already made of gratitude. You're all working so incredibly hard. I'm sure you're exhausted at 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday night, so I'll try to keep you awake and talk through this presentation fairly quick, but just so grateful for the incredible work you are doing to feed neighbors across Massachusetts. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Please let me know if you have any issues seeing it. Did it show up yet or no? Let's try it one more time. Share screen. All right. Can folks see that? Great. All right, let me start from the beginning. So I'm Erin McAleer from Project Bread. Project Bread is a statewide anti-hunger organization. Our mission is to connect people and communities in Massachusetts to reliable sources of food while advocating for policies that make food more accessible so that no one goes hungry. We focus our work on both access, helping individuals access various programs, and advocacy, really focused on removing barriers that we identify through our work. And we specifically focus on the federal nutrition programs, which is a reason why we wanted to talk today, to really serve as a complement and support to the incredible work you're all doing. So there's lots of federal nutrition programs out there, and I know you're familiar with these from your own work, but I wanted to just share information on these 4 ones and really emphasize that your help in promoting these 4 programs in particular, I think will help a lot of people and also hopefully help a lot of folks that are in your lines. So Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, this is the program that provides benefits on a card, an EBT card. Eligibility is based on a number of factors, including income and immigration status. We've seen a 17% increase in the number of people on SNAP since before COVID, and that's what it's supposed to do. This is a program that it's supposed to grow during economic downturns. It's a program that can contract and conflate very quickly during economic times, and it's meant to do that. We are working in health centers throughout Massachusetts. In our work with patients, we're working with low-income families. 40% of them haven't even considered applying for SNAP. So we know there's a significant number of folks out there. And I'll talk more about it. Marconi also talked about a number of the barriers in food pantries and very similar barriers that we're seeing around the federal nutrition programs as well. Recently in December, Congress authorized a 15% boost to SNAP. So it's brought that to $2.30 per person. For a family of 4, this could be up to $750 a month. Obviously, there's lots of factors that go into that amount, but I share that because if a family does get signed up, that's $750 that goes to paying for food, but also to relieving their household budget, money that can go to pay for rent or childcare or other expenses that they may have. And there is now grocery delivery through SNAP. There's only 3 retail providers that are doing it. It doesn't cover the cost of the fee itself. And Pat Baker yesterday shared it's only about 2% of SNAP recipients are using it, but it is out there, and it is a program that's now available. The second is school meal sites. There's over 1,000 in Massachusetts. What's important to know, these are for any child 0 to 18. No identification is required. No, the only question they ask is how many kids. So if you go, you say 2 kids, 3 kids, that's it. No questions asked. You can go to any site. There's a misconception that you can only go to your school site. You know, if you have a daughter in elementary school, some families think that they can only go to that elementary school. They can go to the high school, they can go to the YMCA, they can basically go to whatever program is most convenient for them. Project Bread has both a map that shows all of those programs and the hours, but our food source hotline can also give that information over the phone. Parents can pick up the meals, they can pick up multiple days. These programs will continue through the remainder of this school year, and they also have the capacity to serve more families. Right now, they're serving about 60% of kids as compared to last year when kids were in school. So they can absolutely serve more families. One of the things I'll talk about a little bit later is we found a lot of success when food pantries and school meal sites partner, when the food pantries are at the school meal sites or vice versa, and the families have just one stop to go to pick up meals and groceries. And the other important thing to know is if you are getting PEBT, you can still go to school meal sites. And we encourage families that are struggling to make ends meet to utilize both programs. Pandemic EBT is also on an electronic card. If you're on SNAP, the value is automatically added. If you're not, you receive a card. It provides the value of breakfast and lunch. Approximately 550,000 kids in Massachusetts are eligible. For remote kids, it's $117 a month. For hybrid, it's $58. The Biden administration is currently exploring a 15% increase. This has also been extended through the school year, and families can access both PEBT and school meals. And finally, WIC. WIC is for women who are pregnant and children up to age 5. It provides a lot of different aspects to the program, but it includes supplemental food. And there are providers available throughout Massachusetts. Project Bread can connect you to them. And we have seen an increase there. The one thing I want to just make sure this group knows is regarding immigration status. SNAP does ask about immigration status, and Cara will talk about that in a few minutes from our SNAP outreach coordinator. School meal sites, again, the only question asked is how many kids. PEBT is not subject to immigration status, and WIC does not ask any questions relative to immigration status. The link that I've provided below includes all of the programs out there, including all of yours, Meals on Wheels and whatnot, but I wanted to focus on these 4 because we want to continue to get the word out about them. So I'm going to turn it over to Cara Burns. Cara Burns is Project Bread's Senior Director of SNAP Outreach, and she oversees the Food Source Hotline. So Cara, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Erin. So good to see everyone's faces this evening, and to also know that a lot of your agencies are actually referring families to the Food Source Hotline. As Erin had mentioned and covered, some of the resources that our hotline provides to callers, a lot of it is around food resources such as SNAP, WIC, school meals. So one of the things with the hotline is that when we are getting calls from residents in the state, we look at the entire household. So we do recognize that there are some families that may call, which are multi-generational families. And for this image, you'll see that, there is a grandmother in the home. There could be children under the age of 5. There may be college students. So that is one of the things with the hotline, is that we are making sure that we're trying to equip the household with as many resources as possible. So when we do have families that are calling in, it may not be a situation where the head of household or the guardian that's calling actually qualifies for one of the programs, but someone in the household may. So there may be a senior in the home that may qualify for Meals on Wheels. There are children in the home that could also qualify for some of the school meal programs, as well as PEBT and SNAP. And we do recognize that there are some barriers that many of the households do face when they're applying for some of these programs, which we'll actually cover in our next slide. And Erin, thank you. So these are just some of the barriers that we have heard from our callers on the hotline, which I'm sure, as it was mentioned, that you're also probably hearing about some of the same barriers too. We do recognize that a lot of the nutrition programs out there are underutilized. And that is because of the different barriers that many families are facing. So believe it or not, this time around during COVID, there are a lot of families and individuals that we've spoken with that have never even heard about some of the programs that we provide information on, such as SNAP. SNAP is another program that we mentioned that is underutilized. There were a lot of families that we've screened, which are eligible for the program, but just didn't know about the program itself. So our hotline has been able to provide callers with that information. Another stipulation is that there's also a lot of concern around public charge. So one of the things with our team is that we're well equipped with making sure that we stay up to date with as much information that is constantly changing with the rules and regulations of the SNAP program. So we're trying to make sure that we're providing callers with as much detail and accurate information as possible. So when I touched on the example of there being like a multi-generational household or someone in the home that may not qualify for a program, but someone else in the household that may, SNAP is one of those things. So, you know, if you have a home where there is, you know, a parent or guardian that may not be eligible to apply, it doesn't exclude the child. So those are some of the things that tend to come up on the hotline, which we're there to make sure we're providing as much information as possible. Also, the application process may be a bit mundane for some people to get through. It's difficult for a lot of folks to navigate. So the hotline can actually provide over the phone SNAP application assistance. We're there to make sure that people, you know, are again, well equipped with making sure they know what type of documentation they would need in order to apply. And then sometimes there's just a general concern about, you know, kind of going back to the public charge side of things, that if one person in the household applies, that it's going to affect, you know, another household member being taken away. So there's so many more barriers that we're definitely hearing on the hotline. And Erin, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So this is just kind of an overview of the hotline itself. So the hotline is a comprehensive, confidential, and free service. So we cover the entire state. We do have extended hours. We do understand that at this time there are families that still have to work, even if it may be remote. There are families just like, you know, you guys here on this call tonight that are working into the evening hours. So we do recognize that. And so we do have extended hours Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we're also open on Saturdays from 10 to 2. Another good feature with the hotline is that if someone is unable to call into the hotline, even though it's toll free, we do have a language line. We do have an online chat feature, which is another option of connecting people to the hotline. So if someone chats with one of us live, they're actually speaking with a live person. It's not a robot. I like to remind people of that. And then another great thing is that the hotline, we are able to assist callers in over 180 different languages through our language line interpreter service. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure that you take away, is that the hotline is an available resource. And then the last slide that we have is just actually a quote from one of our callers that had actually been referred to our hotline from a food pantry in Boston. And this was someone that had reached out to us that had been facing some difficult times with their income. They weren't able to keep up with paying their rent. On top of that, the utilities. During this time of year, a lot of people are facing the issue of having to actually kind of choose between which bill they can pay for, on top of having to provide food and put food on the table. So, you know, this is just kind of an example of, you know, how we've been able to connect with a lot of the agencies across the state, and also just an example of how we can actually partner together to meet some of the needs of the people that you're serving each day.
That's great. Thank you, Cara. And I think hopefully you heard it in Cara's voice, but when you call, you receive such compassionate assistance. Just to give Cara a shout out, we recently did a survey of over 100 callers over the summer months, and 100% said they were treated with dignity and respect on the hotline. So we encourage you to call. Right now, the average wait time is 0 to 4 minutes. And so we really want to be there to assist your pantry visitors and others that you are working with. So here's how you can help. Share information about Project Bread's food source hotline. We encourage you to put flyers in the actual food boxes and the bags. We encourage you to, if you have the capacity, to do robocalls or text alerts, mailings, newsletters, however you're getting information out. We encourage you to include the Project Bread's food source hotline, social media, posters displayed in your pantry. We also encourage you to come up with a system to continually promote it. You know, like every Friday afternoon, post on social media or something along those lines, just to continue to get the word out there. We know your trusted community partners. We know your visitors, you know, really look to you. We'd love for you to be ambassadors for these programs. Talk about SNAP, school meals, WIC, share information in your larger community about these programs. Encourage you, as I said earlier, to partner with school meal sites. You know, if you're able to provide some food at the school meal sites themselves, we know that attracts even more families to those meal sites. And obviously advocate for policy change. You know, we've broken down a lot of barriers during COVID. The SNAP application process itself is much easier right now, but also school meals. Right now, we have universal school meals in Massachusetts. So Project Bread is fighting hard to not put these barriers back up. You know, there's a reason why that we needed to break them down during COVID, and we think it's essential that we continue to keep them broken down. So encourage you to join our action team to advocate for both federal and state policy change. And one such example is that just this week we launched a campaign, Feed Kids Solve Hunger, which is to keep Massachusetts providing universal free school meals to all students. And how we can help, this link includes lots of different resources. I'll show you some examples on the next slide, but materials on the hotline, on SNAP, on school meals, they're available in many languages. It includes social media toolkits. And then as far as flyers, there's a link where you can print them, but if you don't have a printer, just reach out to Leah and we will print and mail them to you. We just have a form where you say which ones you want and which languages and the quantity, and we'll get those out to you. We also encourage you to contact our child nutrition program if you want to connect with your school meal site. And one thing I added is because Marconi was talking about La Collaborativa, we've been working to help them consider applying for reimbursement for their youth serving programs through the Summer Food Service Program and the CACF program. So if you're also serving youth specifically, an after school program or whatnot, and you're buying that food right now, we'd love to help you figure out if there's a way that we can get you that food reimbursed from the federal government. And then finally, I know sometimes folks don't want to talk about SNAP because they're not sure they know quite enough. So Project Bread would be happy to do just a 101 training. We would still encourage you to send callers, people to us, but if it's just enough to give you or your board or your volunteers enough information to feel more comfortable talking about this program, we'd be happy to host a subsequent session on that. So I'll close. These are just examples of some of the resources that we have. These are posters that you could print out or that we could share with you. These are materials specific about SNAP and the program. And then here you'll see like the kind of copy we have available in the file that you can access things like social media, tweets, so if you just cut and paste, or if you want to do a text message to families. So that's it, but we would love to hear from you about what more you need. We want to be as supportive as possible to all of you. And I will stop there.